So let's talk about body acceptance and how it can impact your emotional eating. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And I wanted to talk about body acceptance. And I know some of you might be rolling your eyes because whenever I mention body acceptance to women, they're like, oh my God, I don't want to do body acceptance. Like, can we just not do this? And I think it's because we think when we have body acceptance, it means that we have to miraculously love or like our bodies, but that is not what body acceptance is about. Body acceptance is really about becoming more neutral, that critical voice in your head becoming more neutral. So you could actually dislike your body and still have body acceptance, and you don't have to love your body or even like it to have body acceptance. So this is important because usually that voice in our head criticizing us about our body every time we pass by the mirror, that triggers a lot of shame and it can spiral us into emotional eating. It also puts a lot of stress on our body, and so it's actually derailing us from our goals. And so we need body acceptance because it's going to help us get to the other side of emotional eating. It's not just about accepting your body, being neutral around your body. It's also about meeting your deeper needs around your body. And so when I was on my journey with my emotional eating, I didn't see how body acceptance tied into this, but I knew that every time I looked in the mirror, I was super critical, and I just felt, I didn't say the kindest things to myself, and it just felt like it was so debilitating, and it was just this constant criticism and this constant negative dialogue in my head. And when I started to work on body acceptance, what I noticed was that I started to, of course, accept myself, which meant that voice became more neutral. I didn't like everything about my body. But as I started to work on body acceptance, my body started to shift. I noticed I started to feel I had more energy and I wanted to move more. And eventually, over the years, it became more about liking my body and loving myself. And again, you don't have to like every part of your body. It's about becoming neutral. So when we're able to have this relationship to our body, this can reduce a lot of triggers around emotional eating. Because emotional eating is something we do, and I've heard clients say it's like they look in the mirror and they get triggered and then they're like eating because they're like, what's the point? Nothing's changing. And it's because we think if we look a certain way, if we have this perfect body, that's our self-worth, that then we're worthy and valuable, and then finally we'll be acceptable. But if we start giving ourselves that acceptance first, we're going to get there. It's the more sustainable route, and it doesn't mean we're building our self-worth on stand. So when I was on this journey with my emotional eating and tried the diets, there were points that I reached my goal weight, and it was really fleeting because, the compliments or feeling good about yourself, it fades. And when you don't have someone else outside of you to prop up your self-esteem or your self-worth, it fades really quickly, and then there's no point, and then you're back with those emotions, and then you go to food because you don't know how to deal with them because you built everything on sand. And so how does this work? How do we get to body acceptance? How do we move through this so that we can, get to ease and confidence around food and in our body? This is a phase in the emotional eating evolution program. So when I'm working with clients, we're working on this specifically around our body, but it's all interconnected. So even when we are in this emotional eating pattern, we have to look at our triggers. And so you might find that sometimes you're triggered around your body. And it's all about learning to see when you're triggered into this pattern. And maybe you're triggered because you're not nourishing your body. You're not eating enough foods. Maybe you are triggered into emotional eating if you are not taking care of your body, getting enough rest, getting enough nutrients in, because the next day, if you are not well rested, that triggers more hunger in the body, and then you can fall into the spiral. But if I boil it down, there are physical elements of honoring our body and accepting our body's rhythms, but there is the actual things that we say to ourselves. So sometimes we can do mindset shifts and maybe look at our body in a new way, in a more neutral way, more about its ability to help us or to do an activity, or our legs help us get from point A to point B. But when it's really hard to shift that image of our body and we feel so much shame about how we look, there's deeper trauma going on there. And this is what I've found with clients. So if you are triggered into your emotional eating, and it doesn't matter how much you say you love yourself or you affirm in the mirror something about your body and it's not shifting, we have to get into the body where we're holding these traumas and these beliefs about ourselves and resolve it from the root. And I've seen this shift, this pattern a lot with clients. So I had one client that whenever she would go to get-togethers or holiday dinners with her family, everyone would comment about her body, and she would feel so much shame, and that shame would spiral her into emotional eating, and then it would just feel like, what's the point? I'm trying to feel better in my body, I'm trying to take care of my body, and then I spiral into emotional eating around they're commenting. And so we had to do a lot of deeper work about how it all really boiled down to having acceptance for ourselves. She didn't have that from her parents or caregivers, and it wasn't specifically to her body, but it became sort of a way that she felt if she looked a certain way, she would get that acceptance. And so as we worked with that and shifted that, she could start taking care of her body and reducing sort of those triggers from those outside of her, and know when they were coming up and work with them in the body. And when we meet those deeper needs in the body of acceptance, of shifting that nervous system, then our body becomes our body and we want to take care of it. We know how to be with it. We know how to move through those emotions versus just going to food, which are then derailing our goals. And so this is what happens when we're working with those deeper levels of trauma. We have to look at what happened to us that we didn't feel accepted. So it's not necessarily around our body, but it's a sense of acceptance. And can we get to that place? And I know it can feel scary. It's sort of like jumping off this ledge, because we've been taught if we look a certain way, then we'll be accepted. Or at least that's what I felt. If I look a certain way, then I'll be accepted. And it's really about having that acceptance first, and your body's going to follow, because it's going to feel accepted. It's going to get to its healthy. So when we have that acceptance first, our body is going to sort of release that stress, and it's going to get to its healthy. If we say we have to look a certain way in order to be accepted, we put a lot of stress and pressure, and it's almost like we're trying to, and we might be able to really willpower and push ourselves into that body, but when we get there, we won't feel any more worthy. We'll feel like it's conditional. And so when we create that acceptance, and this is what happened in my journey, my body started to shift. And I see this with clients. We have to create that acceptance first. And so once we're able to do that, we can start shifting our emotional eating. There are other areas we need to work on around our relationship to food, and of course our emotions, which is also part of this body acceptance. But as we do that deeper work and we're able to really create that internally, that's going to help us move the needle. And so we won't be chasing, a certain body to feel worthy. We'll start there. And then when we get to our healthy, we're still worthy in that whole journey. We're not building our self-worth on sand. So if you want to get started on resolving your emotional eating, the first place I always say to start and give to clients is to start learning to discern true from emotional hunger and catching your triggers. And if you want to get started on that, I have a free guide below you can download. And if you want to get to ease and confidence around food and in your body in a sustainable way, I'd also love to invite you to find out more about the Emotional Eating Evolution Program. This is my 12-week container full of the step-by-step process, guidance, support, one-to-one sessions, and the in-depth tools to get to the other side of this pattern. And you can find out more at the link below. If you have any questions about what I've shared today, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.